All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a question that really it affects everything from your morning coffee to your summer vacation. In a world where there's not enough of everything to go around, how do we decide who gets what?
Okay, let's dive right in with a puzzle that I think really gets to the heart of how our economy works. We've all seen it, right? Those pictures of crazy long lines at gas stations. But you pretty much never see those same kinds of lines for the latest and greatest smartphone. So what gives? What's the difference? Well, it all comes down to price. See, at the core of, well, pretty much any society, there's this one simple, unchangeable fact. There just isn't enough of everything for everyone who wants it. Economists have a name for this. They call it scarcity. And it's the fundamental problem we're always trying to solve.
So this creates a huge challenge, right, for every single society. Now, some have tried using things like central planning to decide who gets what, but most of the world relies on a totally different system, one that's decentralized and runs pretty much automatically in the background of our lives.
And that's where the price system comes in. It's the market's elegant and, yeah, sometimes kind of brutal way of figuring all this out, all without a single person having to be in charge.
Okay, so here's the key idea. The price itself acts as a kind of gatekeeper. When something becomes scarce, its price goes up. And that higher price makes sure that the limited supply goes to the people who are either most willing or most able to pay for it. It's a rationing system that just happens.
You know, we actually saw this play out for real on a global scale back in 2010. There were these massive wildfires in Russia that destroyed a huge chunk of the world's wheat crop. So all of a sudden, the world was facing a classic scarcity problem. How did we decide who got the wheat that was left? So what happened? Well, take a look. The price of wheat shot up from $160 to almost $250 per metric ton. That's a huge jump. And that higher price, it sent this powerful signal all across the globe. Some people switched to other grains. Farmers in other countries worked harder to grow more. The rising price rationed that smaller supply without a single person having to make a phone call. Okay, but what happens when we look at that price and we say, whoa, that's just too high, that's not fair? This is where governments often decide to step in and try to override what the market is doing.
That's what a price ceiling is. It's a direct intervention, a legal limit on how high a price can go. And look, it's usually done with the best intentions, right? The goal is to make essential stuff more affordable for everybody. Probably one of the most famous examples of this whole thing is the US gas crisis back in 1974. An oil embargo caused the supply to just plummet, and the market price for gas was heading toward maybe $1.50 a gallon. But the government stepped in and capped it at just 57 cents. And the result? Well, it was predictable. Widespread shortages and total chaos.
So now the price is frozen. It can't do its job anymore, its job of rationing. So the system had to find other ways, much less efficient ways, to figure out who gets the gas. Because the demand for gasoline, that definitely didn't go away. And make no mistake, people still paid. They just started paying with stuff that wasn't money. They paid by waiting in line for hours and hours. That's a currency of time. They paid with their connections, as gas station owners saved supplies for their so-called favored customers. And yeah, some paid by taking big risks in newly formed black markets.
And hey, this isn't just some old story about gas lines. This exact same thing explains why trying to get tickets to see a huge artist can feel totally impossible. When the face value is set way below what people are actually willing to pay, the price can't do the rationing anymore. So what takes over? You know what it is. Virtual queues, super fast scalper bots, and a massive resale market.
Okay, so we get it. These interventions cause problems. But how do economists, actually measure the damage? Well, they have a kind of scorecard, a way to put a number on the win that both buyers and sellers get from any transaction. So first, let's look at it from your side, from the buyer's side. Economists call this consumer surplus. But honestly, just think of it as the personal profit you make on a purchase. It's that feeling of, yes, I got a great deal.
Yeah, that simple thought, that's exactly what consumer surplus is. It's all that extra satisfaction, that extra value you walk away with. And for the whole market, it's just the sum of all those millions of individual wins.
All right, now let's flip it around and look at the other side of the deal. If that restaurant was willing to sell you that burger for just 75 cents, but they got $2.50 for it, that difference, that's their producer surplus. It's the seller's win from the sale.
So here's the thing. The whole point of an efficient market is to make the biggest possible economic pie for everyone. That happens when you add up all those wins for both the buyers and the sellers, what they call the total surplus, when that number is at its absolute maximum.
And that right there brings us to the true kind of hidden cost of a price ceiling. It goes way beyond just the frustration of waiting in a long line.
Yet beyond the hassles and the frustration, there's a real, tangible economic loss that hits everybody. There's a real cost when you short-circuit that price system.
So here's how it works, or how it doesn't work. That artificially low price means sellers just have less reason to produce the stuff, so less of it gets made. And now you've got this gap where you have people who want to buy and people who would be willing to sell at a higher price, but now they legally can't make that deal.
And economists, of course, have a name for this lost value. They call it deadweight loss. And what's crucial here is that this value doesn't just move from the seller to the buyer. Nope, it just vanishes. It's gone from the economy forever. It's a loss that benefits absolutely no one.
This chart right here shows you exactly what's going on. An efficient market, that creates the biggest possible total value, right? But when you jam a price ceiling in there, you don't just reslice the pie. You actually shrink the whole thing. That missing piece you see, that's the deadweight loss. It represents all those good trades that just never got to happen. So this leaves us with a really fundamental question, doesn't it? Price controls are almost always a trade-off. You're aiming for fairness, but it often comes at the cost of efficiency, creating shortages and this deadweight loss we've been talking about. So the real question we have to ask as a society is, when is that trade-off actually worth it? And understanding that choice, well, that's the key to making better decisions.